Hi there, I'm Andre from P Motorcycles and I'm here at EICMA. I mean, technically I'm outside of EICMA, I'm outside the exhibition centre. It's a beautiful day, we have blue skies. It is a little bit chilly though. The reason I'm here is that when I did my preview video, somebody asked if I could take a look at the EICMA Desert Queens Dakar bike exhibition, which is in this big sort of poly tent behind me. So yeah, I'm quite glad to get a bit of fresh air and come outside, but I'm going to go and have a wander around and I'll try and show you as many bikes as I can. Here we go. And my guess is that this is something that is going to go old to new, with Thierry Sabine's very first, and well, it's not in the best condition anymore. If anyone's looking for any tips on what to do with their bikes, I mean, I think it just needs a bit of paint and some bearings maybe. I'm sure it'll be fine after that. In case you're wondering, that is a Yamaha XT 500 and it's the bike that inspired the Dakar. What we do have here is now a few more XT 500s. This is the bike of Cyril Neveu. As you can see, it's not exactly like the modern Dakar bikes. It does look like something that's been cobbled together, maybe even with an aftermarket fuel tank and possibly mudguard. This is a bike from Honda's first victory in the Dakar in 1982. It's an XR 500R. I mean, even the proportions look a bit odd by bikes of this standard, but that is a lot of travel for that front suspension. Now moving on to 1979, things are becoming a little bit more organised. You know, the suits, the boots, even that XT 600 Tenere. Yeah, I mean that's not a huge amount that's been done to it. I'm sure that bike still runs, but that is kind of cool. You can see where maybe they had the paper instructions mounted up on top. Moving on, we now have Herbert Auriol's BMW R80GS Dakar bike. I don't think there have been any boxes in the Dakar for a while. That one's from '83. The following year, in '84, we have this Yamaha XT 600 Tenere, who took it back. 1985, we have a Moto Guzzi. Here we have a Guzzi V65 TT. Again, the bottom bits, a lot of these bikes looks fairly standard, then the further up you go, the less and less familiar they become. And here we have a Kajiva Elephant 750 from 1986. So they've had a few knocks on the fuel tank along the way, and maybe even using that Acerbis tank to keep them going now. Following on from which, we have a Suzuki DRZ 750 big. That was that big 750 single cylinder. I mean, that looks pretty cool, even now. Next up, Honda HRD XL 630. This one from 1989. Again, they're becoming more and more like sort of the Dakar bikes with the towers, even if it is still a bit rough and ready. 1990, we have a Genera RC 600. Again, doesn't really look that recognisable, that rear tank, the two rear tanks there. Certainly looking a little bit unusual, but you can see how that's kind of evolved into what you have today on the modern bikes with the rear mounted tanks. Moving on, we have the Honda XRV 750 from 1991. That feels relatively recent to me. I know it isn't, but it just still feels, 91 is a year I can remember, maybe that's the difference. Also from that year, we have this XTZ 750 Super Tenere. I mean, that just looks like a really tall bike. Yeah, just seeing just how, you know, the distance to the top of the tank from that skid plate. And then here we have a Kajiva Elephant 900 from 1990. And I think that's probably the first bike that I've seen now that is actually starting to look like what we expect a Dakar bike to be, with those big tanks left and right, the rear tank as well, even that exhaust routing, and even how the front end, you know, how that sort of forward mounted screen with the roadbook behind it is more and more reminiscent of what we have today. Here we have a Kawasaki KLE 500. It's particularly apt given the arrival of the new Kawasaki KLE 500 at this year's EICMA. Here we have Alex Cox's KTM 660 from 2000. Yeah, still some older elements on there, but looking more and more like Dakar bikes. Okay, from 2002 we have Fabrizio Mione's KTM LCA 950 Rally. Still plenty of 950s out there. I'm not sure how many of them are this old. You can see that heritage and how that is carrying on through. That's really cool. 1999, we have a BMW F650 RR. So that would be a BMW F650 twin, I believe. Could that be right? I think BMW normally use the F designation for the twins. This is beside a board that mentions in 2003 the first paper roll books that were electrically operated became the standard and were used for the Dakar. Jumping ahead now to 2009, we have a KTM 690 Rally. That is a Dakar bike, without a doubt. If you saw that, you would know exactly what it was. Moving on to 2011, I guess the displacement's going down as the engines got better. Here we have the 2011 RXV 450 Rally. Those Arrow exhausts at the back, oh, they look awesome. That is morphing into what we know today. From 2011, there was that 450cc limit. Here we have the KTM 450 Rally factory from 2014. Those of you who run these might see some similarities of what you know today. Right then, here we have the 2018 and 2020 Honda Rally bikes. Undeniably, what you might see on the telly these days. You can see just how far the equipment's come. Billeted parts everywhere, all that carbon fibre on the towers. You know, the technology, I think this one has the electronic roadbook fitted, dripping with sort of the performance parts from the Honda factory. In 2022, we have the Fantic. I remember seeing this at EICMA in 2021 actually. I think it was based around a Yamaha engine with a Fantic bike that was one of the first non-KTM, you know, ready to race bikes that you could buy, and this was Franco Picciot's from 2022. 2022 was also when Danilo Petrucci entered the Dakar on a factory KTM, and here it is, that's his bike. And again, I mean, that's looking in pretty good condition. I'm wondering if that's had any rebuilding work along the way. That looks pretty cool. And for 2025, Honda have started to make the CRF 450 RX Rally, so people who want to buy a Honda bike and enter the Dakar on it, so you know, not the factory entrance. And this is one of them. This is one of the 4 pre-production bikes they had built. The last few, here we have the Sherco 450 SCF Factory Rally from 2025, ridden by Lorenzo Santolino. They're just getting leaner and faster, and certainly memorable from off the telly. This is the Hero 450 Rally. I have done a video from a Hero stand where I think they have one of these. It's not actually that similar to the X-Pulse bikes they sell. I see this has got Ross Branch. This is Ross Branch's bike, and he's signed the X-Pulse 210s. However, I suspect they are very, very different creatures. Also, there's a small thing about from 2024 when they brought in the electronic units. And then the last 2 bikes, the first of which is this Co 450 Rally EX. So out of China, I have one of the road legal versions of the Co 450 Rally. So quite different to the X, I'm afraid. Mine has a road legal exhaust and a catalytic converter, but the proportions are there. I think there are a few changes from the first Cove that ran in 2022. This one is from the bike for 2026. That carbon fibre tower at the front, even the exhaust filler for the rear tank is very different to the early bikes. And here we have the KTM 450 Rally Factory, very much the de facto bike, the winner of this year's Dakar. I mean, they just look so cool. You know, they really are amazing pieces of kit. I'm sure that to ride something like that is far beyond my level of ability. I'll see if I can stay upright on my Cove 450 in its road going form. So there you go, that is it. That is my look around the EICMA Desert Queens exhibition here at EICMA 2025. If you're coming to EICMA and you want a bit of a change from the busyness inside the main halls, I can definitely recommend coming and having a look at this exhibition. There's some fascinating machines here. I hope that's been interesting and useful. I think this video has been a bit longer than I thought it might have been, but the bikes there are interesting enough, and it's filmed in 4K, so if you want to try and pick out some of the details, by all means pause it and do what you can. So with that, I'm going to head back into the mayhem that is EICMA itself. I hope that was interesting and useful. If it has been, please check out my other content, and yeah, follow the Dakar when it arrives in January 2026. All right, thanks for watching.